Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure review on the Host Productions. In today's review I'm going to be taking a look at the final 3-pack as a part of the B&M exclusive 2022 series. In today's review, the rather unusual 9th Doctor collector set featuring 2 variants of the 9th Doctor alongside a Rose Tyler figure. It's like being back in 2005 and 2006 all over again. Starting off by taking a look at the packaging of this collector set, it is virtually exactly the same to any other B&M exclusive 3-pack which has came out over the past few years. At the very bottom we have the title of the set, and then of course just above this we have the usual limited edition foil sticker. At the very top we have the stacked variation of the Doctor Who logo, and it has only just occurred to me that this is probably going to be the last ever wave to actually feature this design. And then of course finally we have that rather large plastic display window giving a good look at the figures on the inside of the box. Once again, very much like the last wave, we don't have any unique background, it's this time just a regular white design, which is a shame. That's pretty much it for the front of the box. The sides repeat basically exactly the same thing that we've seen many times before, and then taking a look at the back, once again we have the same information repeated. Very much like the vast majority of the most recent releases in this series, the images have been entirely dropped from the back, and this time around we just have a little bit of a write-up about the 9th Doctor's personality. So firstly, I'm going to be taking a look at the holographic 9th Doctor. Why? Because that is the figure of the set that I was most looking forward to. Because this is one of those figures that has almost a legendary status attached to it, because it has intended to be released on quite a number of occasions, including in this current normal stance, but also the disco dancing position, and it is so lovely to finally be able to add this variant to the collection after all these years. It's almost very similar circumstances to the likes of the 2nd Doctor in Fur Coat, where the prototype images have been flung around the internet now for so many years. It does feel very unusual having this figure in person. But with that said, despite my own excitement, there is nothing really too much to this figure which is new or exciting, because it utilises exactly the same sculpt that we have seen for the 9th Doctor now since 2006, 2007, so this figure adopting exactly the same sculpt of any other 9th Doctor. We do have the continuation of exactly the same details that you would come to expect on the 9th Doctor's jacket, except this time round, due to the transparent nature, you can't really see the details as much, which I suppose is intended because he's meant to be kind of flickering in and out of reality. The entirety of the jacket does of course have that lovely material effect, looking very stressed, nice and rippled in various different areas. It collects in a very natural manner, and this does of course also continue along to the back of the jacket as well. Suggestion of the lapels along with the outline as per usual, the various arches within the back of the leather jacket. You may be able to see in the lighting due to the figure being transparent, you can quite evidently make out the PVC lettering underneath, which is a little bit of a shame. It doesn't really show up too prominently, so it's not much of an issue. The lovely textured detailing continues onto the jacket, featuring various creases and wrinkles. Hands have been sculpted in the usual manner, one of which is in an open palm position, very eerie indeed, and then the other one has been sculpted to hold the sonic screwdriver, which isn't featured within this set. I've always really loved the sculpting on the 9th Doctor's jacket because it is so realistic and so much detail is present within it. I think it really captured that worn appearance. This is made out of a really flexible plastic, and normally pulling it back reveals the 9th Doctor's jumper underneath in various different colours. However, this time round of course it is just clear, and we can actually kind of see how the figure is cobbled together and the various bits of articulation, which is a really nice novelty, especially given how long we've actually had this action figure, to see those inner workings and essentially how the components are put together. Of course, this 9th Doctor figure isn't alone when it comes to being a character options figure that is transparent. There has been a number in the past, including of course most recently a Dalek from Planet of the Daleks, as well as the holographic 10th Doctor. I like about the way that this 9th Doctor has been designed, and I do believe something which varied each and every time this figure was meant to come out, is the way that that transparent kind of TARDIS emergency protocol effect was presented with darkened washes in bands across the entirety of the figure, almost making it look like an old TV screen, kind of the signalling moving up the screen and down. It's probably the best possible way that you could have kind of reflected this design in what is ultimately a plastic action figure. Moving further down the figure now to take a look at the trousers. Again, this is exactly the same sculpt to always, so we get the continuation of that material effect. Now flipping around to the back, again we have a few sort of stresses within the top half of the thigh. And finally we have the Ninth Doctor's shoes. Again, exactly the same detailing to usual, really impressive. So the treads on the bottom, the laces and the various different panels. A transparent bluey colour. It kind of reminds me of the texture of sea glass on a beach. Let's take a look at that likeness to Christopher Eccleston, and possibly even the final ever time that this very faithful head sculpt will be utilised as a part of the Character Options series. Much like the rest of the figure, it has been sculpted in a transparent plastic, so subsequently it has been painted in a really unusual way. So basically all of the facial features that you would expect to see paint on have been replicated with this rather unusual black wash, including the lips, eyes and eyebrows. It definitely looks very haunting indeed, because you kind of feel like there's meant to be more to it, but there isn't. And then we have the hair as well. I love the way that we have a very subtle black wash on this, emphasising a number of those strands, but it works very well. And much like the rest of the body, I think it was the best possible manner to kind of replicate that holographic effect. In summary, what do I think of the hologram Ninth Doctor? Well, I really like it, and yes, it is incredibly simple, but I think it is very effective, and I think that part of the reason why I really like this figure is because we have meant to have had it for so many years, so finally adding it to the collection feels like something special, because it feels like a figure that we have always had but not had. Due to the Ninth Doctor not staying around for long, it is nice to have a brand new variant to add to the shelf. I think as well a fair comparison that can be drawn is when you compare this figure to the variants of the 10th Doctor seen within the previous wave of B&M exclusives within the 10th Doctor collector set. This figure utilises exactly the same sculpt that we've seen for so many years, and yet it is a really effective and to me a welcome variant to the collection, unlike some of the 10th Doctors seen within that set, which just seemed utterly pointless. This actually has a reason and a purpose to exist. So now moving on to the second figure of the set. I can't quite believe that this is on the shelves of B&M in the year of 2023. It is Rose Tyler from Series 1, one of the first ever figures released from Character Options in this position. She's about to beat someone up. I'm going to be honest, and I'm probably in a minority when it comes to saying this, I absolutely love this sculpt. I really do, and I think it is again something to do with childhood and the fact that this was one of my first ever figures, and I have very fond memories of this design. I did always find it really unusual where we got so many different monsters throughout the Character Options line of action figures when the line was really popular, and yet it was fairly common for the companions to only really receive one release. It would have been really lovely to have a Rose Tyler from Series 1 actually stood normally, because her costumes vary quite significantly between the two series. I believe that I read on Twitter that this costume variation for Rose appears at the very end of the Slitheen two-parter, and when it does appear, it's for all but a few seconds, so it is very much clutching at straws. And of course, what is more exciting than having one Rose Tyler figure looking like it's about to beat you up, than 3 Rose Tyler figures looking like they're about to beat you up? So you may laugh and think that this looks unusual, but in reality this format of having 3 of the same figure is basically what we got within the last wave of B&M exclusives. And just also take a moment to appreciate the fact that I actually went all the way home back to Hosty HQ, and whilst picking up these recent B&M sets I decided that carting these 2 variants up to Newcastle in order to do this comparison was a worthy use of time. So taking a closer look at Rose Tyler's outfit, moving away the clenched fists, what they've gone for here is a rather matte red. Unlike some of the previous releases that we have seen, it's incredibly simple, so we just have one block colour. There's no wash that has been applied over the top or anything like that. Of comparing this to the original release, as you can see, there was a little bit more going on, such as the silver paint application continuing on the zipper itself, as well as the indication of buttons here towards the bottom. Also on the original release, this section up the top here here was in fact a shirt underneath the jacket, but this time around they painted it all one colour to give the appearance that it is all one jumper. One other additional highlight that we do have is the silver paint on the zipper, which is in fact rather sharp. One of the most notable changes for this figure's outfit is that the arms are now a grey colour with kind of a whitewash applied over the top, which does emphasise some of the creases, to be fair, especially in the lower arm, and we also have this small kind of lace section coming down the side. Rarity with the figures released today, both of the hands have been sculpted in a clenched position, and we do also have the additional silver highlight picking out the detail of a ring. Turning the figure around to the back now, again we have a further change, arguably one of the most notable for this release. Again, that is the fact that this is entirely a grey with a whitewash applied over the top. There is also the suggestion of a hood there, just underneath the hair section, along with a few creases and wrinkles surrounding the entirety of the jacket, and she also has some good old BBC company information stamped on her lower back. To me, this is the most notable difference because the original versions of Rose infamously have her name stamped on her back, because this is the uniform that she wears in her debut story, of course when she's employed in that clothing shop. And whilst we've got this angle, we may as well compare the ridiculous different variations of hair that we've seen over the years. Moving further down the figure now to Rose Tyler's trousers. God, you can tell this figure came straight out of the early 2000s, can't you? With those massive flared trousers and their very unusual stance. One of the negatives of having a figure which has been posed in this rather unusual manner is that the various points of articulation don't exactly sit as neatly as you would expect. The crotch joint here isn't particularly the best visually. We have chunks missing out of the leg as well as these diagonal cuts, and it isn't particularly any better towards the back either, where she has chunks missing out of the backside. Comparing to the first version of Rose that we've seen released with the vibrant yellow hair, this is basically a very glossy blue. It looks incredibly plasticky, no additional wash has been applied whatsoever. Using this darker blue paint application and then applying over the top of this a lighter blue wash, it allows for some of those creases to look a little bit more natural. The trousers look a bit more textured, as if they are actually denim jeans. What they've attempted to do with this latest version is make what is, let's face it, quite an outdated sculpt somewhat more modern in the way the paint has been applied to it. But with that in mind, there is still nothing changing the actual stance of this figure, which in turn will always make it kind of stand out on the shelf as something a little bit different. Once you've looked beyond the very flared trousers poking out underneath, you can of course see Rose Tyler's trainers. Not really too much detailing on these because you can barely see them. However, what you can see has been given a very vibrant white paint application, much like the previous releases. I always find it quite funny that when you tilt this figure upside down, you really get the impression of just how flared these trousers actually are. Likeness now, does it actually look like Billie Piper? You know what, I think it does. I think that it's kind of a love-hate sculpt. I think that some people think it looks absolutely nothing like her. I think paint application wise they've done quite a good job here. Again, this is something that has seen a lot of variation over the years, and very much like the costume, I think they've tried to apply kind of a modern character options paint application to what is an old sculpt. So we do have lots of nice details picked out, in particular the teeth with that very vibrant white paint application, the lighter pink on the lips. The eyes are also rather unusually done. Again, we have lots of focus on the eyelashes. My brows have been given a rather cartoon-esque look, which is a bit odd to say the least, but I think definitely it looks like Billie. I just don't think it is the most effective actual positioning of the face. She kind of looks continuously shocked, and I don't quite know why. As for the hair, again, this has been really impressively done. We have lots of lovely shades which have been utilised here. We have a yellow base and then a darker wash applied over the top of like a darker orange and maybe a little bit of light brown. There we go. Turning to the side, I think that the likeness of Billie is definitely in that, more so than the front to say the least. But then turning around to the back once again, giving another closer look at the various different hair sections. Lovely jubbly. It's kind of as good as they could do, really, utilising this sculpt. And let's face it, even if you don't like it, it's certainly not as bad as whatever the hell is going on here. Toxic yellow, like close to the second release, which did at least try to apply that wash, but again, it's not as effective as the most recent edition. Let's face it, they've done what they could with what they have. I think that the budget for the 3 packs seems to be rapidly reducing over the past few years, so I think that this is probably the new level of what we are going to start to see from this range, and the likes of new head sculpts might be few and far between. But in summary for Rose, it's like that 10th Doctor set that got released last wave. It's alright, it exists, I suppose. The paint application's pretty decent, but it's about as remarkable as it looks, and because of how unremarkable it is, it's not really even that dislikable, because you can't really dislike it, because it doesn't really spark that much hate. It's just there. So now let's take a look at the third and final figure of the 9th Doctor collector set, and it is another 9th Doctor. And I'm going to get straight to the point and say that this figure makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. And I think it's because the 9th Doctor figure is one that has been ingrained into my mind since childhood. It has been released so many times. And then all of a sudden we have this 9th Doctor rocking up with a brand new jacket and a brand new head, and it just feels weird. It feels like something is off. It feels like an imposter. It's almost like it's fell through from another dimension. But hey, are the changes any good? Are they better than the original? I'll save them till later. I'm going to look at the things that are retained first. Starting off with the boots, these are the same usual sculpt. They have been given a matte black finish, and as per usual, sport exactly the same details that you come to expect. Moving further up the figure now to the trousers, these are exactly the same sculpt to usual, however have seen quite a major paint application change to look like denim jeans, which I'm really questioning the accuracy of this. I honestly thought that the 9th Doctor on TV only wore black trousers to kind of coincide with the rest of his outfit, so I'm not quite sure where these have came from, maybe comic books, no idea. Dark blue base colour has been utilised here, and then over the top of this we have a lighter blue wash. Especially on this leg here, you can see this blue wash really picking out the detailing of that large crease running up the very centre of the trouser. The same can be said turning around to the back. We have lots more wash that has been applied. It's quite nice, I'm just questioning its accuracy. Torso of this 9th Doctor figure is where things start to get a little bit unusual, as we have a combination of both new and old. So the base of the figure, so obviously the neck and the chest and the jumper, all of that is the old sculpt, along with the arms. Those are also retained from the original figure. However, over the top of this we have a brand new PVC sculpted jacket, and I don't know if it's just because I'm so used to the other sculpt, but I think you can definitely tell the difference between the arms here and the jacket. This seems to be just a lot softer overall in design. One of the first things that I noticed as soon as I picked up this figure is simply how flexible the jacket is. It's made of an incredibly flexible PVC, which does feel really unusual. Of course, the jackets have been flexible in the past, but this one does feel really, really flexible. And I have the inclusion of 3 buttons running up either side, which have a decent amount of detail. And then we do also have the suggestion here of 2 pockets at the midpoint of the torso. Now, this design does also continue further down the jacket, as we also have these side pockets which have been sculpted on. I really do like the way that these have actually been risen above the sculpt itself. If you look very closely, there is also the suggestions of the various panels within the jacket towards the upper half of this piece, and then we also have the lapels, which again are fairly simply sculpted, and due to the way that the jacket has been sculpted we can easily peel this back to take a look at the jumper underneath. Same old, same old. If you have a kind of purpley paint application which has been used, which I'm unsure what episode this is from, I'll be honest. The entirety of the coat has been sculpted in a dark brown coloured plastic. Although it's not a block brown, we do have a wash which has been applied over the top as well, kind of a lighter orangey colour. This really accentuates some of those smaller details. We have a little bit of a brushstroke effect up here towards the lapels. Also continues onto the back of the jacket, where you have a few of your usual details once again repeated, including a number of creases and wrinkles. Back of the jacket features your usual belted section, once again including a wash applied over the top of this, as well as a very, very soft suggestion of a button there as well. The sculpting here is rather basic indeed, but it just seems a little bit too soft in design. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like it. Although what I would like to say is that I grew up with this figure right here. So if any figure feels right, it is always going to be this one. However, I just think it is so much better in design. In my opinion, the 2023 version simply looks too basic. Honest, I think this is probably one of the worst components that you could possibly try and replace on any character options action figure, because the original sculpt is simply just so good. Considering the fact that it is literally a plastic action figure, I think the way that they've managed to capture that leathery effect is absolutely superb. I think that it's clearly got so much life in it. It looks like a coat that has been worn over many years, and perhaps this is a good example of maybe some of the sculpts in recent years kind of lacking the character. This is what we used to have. One perhaps lacks that character. It doesn't really have any personality, and the fact that it is incredibly flexible indeed, there just isn't really too much to it. I think it does the job as that costume. However, when you put it alongside the original release, it simply just doesn't live up to expectations. Apparently the sculpt has been replaced because the original mould has gone soft or something like that, which has been happening I think quite a lot in recent years. Who knows, maybe over time I'll get used to it. Maybe it needs another release with a slightly revised paint application and colour scheme to draw out those details a bit more, but for now I remain unconvinced. And of course the changes do not stop there, as we have a brand new head sculpt for the Ninth Doctor, which is very unusual after all these years. So firstly the basics. Does it look like Christopher Eccleston? Yes, I think it does. Is the paint application good? I think it's a mix between being very different to the original release, but also starting to stray into the realm of caricature. It just looks a bit much. I think the paint application overall is really sharp. I'm really drawn to the eye detailing, where we have the various details of the iris there with that lighter blue, even the reflection of the little white dot and that black line at the top to kind of represent eyelashes. But then we have the lips and the eyebrows. Again, these have been done with a rather thick paint, and I think that this might be another case of a head sculpt that is actually rather good, but a lot of those details have been drowned out through the paint application. If you look very closely, you have a number of those features that remain familiar to the original sculpt, the likes of the forehead wrinkles and the wrinkles around the nose as well, and we don't really have too much around the sides of the face. A little bit of bone structure, of course, from the cheekbones, but this time around the pimple isn't as prominent as the original release, so I think perhaps a slight revision to the paint application may bring out those details a little bit more. Of course, we have the Ninth Doctor's iconic ears around the side, and as for the hair, this is pretty much exactly the same to usual, really. There's not too much that you can do with a hairstyle like this. What is nice to see is we do have a base colour, and then a wash that has been applied over the top, kind of a lighter brown, just to make it look a bit more interesting. So yeah, it's an odd one. Credit where credit is due. I don't think a brand new head sculpt for the Ninth Doctor was really on anyone's bucket list of expectations, so I think it is nice for the sake of variety to have something new, but it's the big question of whether that something new is better than the original. Something that I do certainly support is the fact that they've gave the Ninth Doctor a more positive expression, again simply for the sake of variety. The original sculpt that has been used many times is rather neutral to the extent of almost looking a bit serious. At least this head sculpt kind of tries to evoke some of the Ninth Doctor's more positive personality. It's very much like how I mentioned at the very start of this segment, where this figure has quite a lot of change to the extent where I feel like it's almost fell through from an alternative dimension. The jacket lacks character and personality, and I much prefer the original sculpt because it looks more authentic to the on-screen costume prop, and the head sculpt is new, certainly has potential, but I think perhaps the paint application exaggerates some of the features a little bit more than it should. So if this Doctor asked me to go on the trip of a lifetime, I'd probably turn him down on the offer and go for the original instead. In summary, what do I think of the B&M exclusive Ninth Doctor collector set? I will be completely honest, and I think that this one is a very easy miss. I think if you're someone who has been collecting the Character Options series for quite a number of years, there is a clear winner within this set, and that is of course the holographic Ninth Doctor. It is without a doubt lovely to finally add this figure to the collection, but I will be completely honest, I would have happily bought it by itself and not got the other two figures with it. New Ninth Doctor leaves a lot to be desired. I'm not a fan of the new jacket, and I'm not as much of a fan of the new head sculpt either. I think that the paint application most certainly needs to be revised on that to make it look a bit better, and the Rose Tyler is that unremarkable, I can't even say that I don't really like it. It's just there, it exists, and there's not really too much else to it. So I think that this set is a very easy miss if you're an occasional collector. If you don't have a Ninth Doctor or a Rose Tyler, then maybe go on eBay and take a look at the originals, because they are significantly better than these these ones, and you can probably pick them up quite cheap. And yeah, if this one is in your local B&M store and you've not got it yet, maybe wait around until it's in the reduced to clear section, because I can't see this set being too thought after. Hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for regular Doctor Who content. Have a nice day, and I shall see you all next time.